I will never forget meeting with my second client in the Market of Choice parking lot to pick up a check from her because I didn't want to pay the 3% Stripe fee because that's where I was at. Yeah, everybody always asks me where the heck did Thencan Designs come from? It actually started, I texted my etymology nerd friends and I said, guys, I need a cool word. What do you got for me? And they threw a couple out there and eventually they came up with Thencan, and it's the root word for like thoughtful. And I was like, ooh, I want to make thoughtful websites. I like that. And now for the rest of my life, I get to explain that story. And sometimes I resent that, but it's actually a conversation starter. So I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I also usually make the joke that the domain was available because that's a problem. So
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the reason I wanted to know that and the reason I wanted to record that is because I have like almost the exact same story. Like I changed it. This was very recent because I realized like, okay, I got to grow up a little bit. But I started as Mindful Milligan Graphics because of it started off as a freelance design thing I did in college, like for athletes, like
yeah.
baseball, football, track. It was basically just social media graphics. So it's like, okay, mindful. And I was really into like meditating and like holistic stuff, like running and, affirmations and all that, like new age stuff that you probably find like in college. And anyway, so it's like, okay, Mindful Milligan Graphics did that. And then at my first Marysville chamber meeting, this was like 6 months ago, they read out my introduction to my LLC. They said Mindful Mulligan Graphics, and he was like, had the biggest trouble saying it. And I was like, I'm supposed to raise my hand for that, but I'm not going to. But so I switched it to MMG Design. So it's kind of the same, kind of not. It was kind of enough of a pivot to where it's the same thing, but it's like a lot less atrocious and shorter. And MMG is just flows off the tongue a lot better. So. But yeah,
just roll off the tongue. But
was.
I appreciate that story. Mindfulness is
Mm-hmm.
important. So I
Yeah,
think a lot of
that's why.
people, I bet a lot of your clients would appreciate that story. So don't be afraid to tell
Yeah,
it.
yeah, that's what I mean. That's why I like resonate with yours so specifically because it's part of it is just a story. Like especially at networking events, when they ask you like, oh, what does MMG stand for? And then you have the story, and then half of the battle of going to these networking events and doing these uncomfortable situations is having something to talk about and just not stuttering over your words. Because I bet it's like that is me a lot of the time. So having anything to fall back on. Do you have like a repertoire of things like in your mind, just like that you can riff on right away? Because I'll talk about like my sister or her dog or anything. Like I'll try and go up with something in mind to talk about because I'm honestly so bad at just thinking of stuff on the spot. Like, so I was wondering if you had anything you want to go to.
Yeah, that's a good one. I've always been a big sports fan growing up, and so I will either, if I see a team I like, that makes it very easy because I can just go straight to a player or something like that. Oftentimes it's not, and so then I try to find like a way to rib their team, and so it's usually a good way to break the ice one way or the other. In Oregon, there's two big schools. There's Oregon State; those are the good ones. That's the Beavers, and then we have the Ducks, bunch of bandwagon fans. And so I always carry my Beavers water bottle around, and it will either cause good conversations or bad conversations, but it starts conversations and then we kind of go from there. And so a lot of times people will we only got the Blazers out here for professional sports teams, and so there's a lot of people picking one side of the fence for the college teams. And so a lot of times that can be my entryway into a conversation. I'll see them wearing a Duck sweatshirt and I'll say something, like, oh, you guys are all about the money, huh? That's why you're going to the Big Ten. And then they'll be like, well, I think it's a bad idea too. And then next thing you know, we're talking, and then I say, what do you do? And I'm a big fan of I can't remember the book. I want to say it was Dale Carnegie, How to Influence People or something like that. One of those classics.
Yeah, win friends. Yep.
Yeah, I try to. I'm constantly trying to flip the conversation back to them, especially with newer people, and especially like early on with clients. I'm always trying to flip it back to them because, and also I like to learn. I love learning about people and their stories, and so I want to. A lot of times, one of the first things I'll ask people is, "What do you do?" Because I know they want to get that out. And then a lot of times I'll follow that up with like, how did you get into that? Or, like, what's your favorite thing about that? Those are a lot of questions I like to ask. I think, giving people space to talk about themselves and what they do, often they'll open up very quickly, and then it turns into a two-way conversation pretty fast.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, yeah, that's great. And I think, and it's almost counterintuitive too, because you almost think that people don't want to have the spotlight on them, because like, if someone were to like put a microphone in my face and make me say something, then, I would just be like, get away from me. But no, people actually really like talking about themselves. And we do too, is you have to find a personality that, brings that out of people. I get coffee with this guy every Saturday, every other Saturday. And genuinely, I met him at a networking event, but his name's Michael, but he's like genuinely one of the most interesting people like I've ever met. And I said, Michael, like, and he's a very weird use case, because this guy, he has an incredible story, and he's like one of those people that'll say something like it's no big deal, and it just blows my mind, and just consistently, time after time, is like it's no big deal to this guy. But basically, long story short, one of the stories that he told me last time was, and by the way, the reason I go over to his house on Saturdays is because he's like super ritualistic about his coffee. He has like all these super expensive beans, and he has a Chemex, and he does this whole process, and he's teaching me about it. But he has a photography business. But anyway, the one thing he said was that he had 4 roommates in college, and they all went on to be founders. And he named these companies. One of them was like a coffee subscription service. The other one, they're like 4 marketing companies, and he's bringing up these companies on LinkedIn, and he's showing me it's like 200-300 employees, like all this stuff. And he's like, yeah, we talk every now and again. And I asked him, because like we got to know each other pretty well, and I said, like, do you ever feel like you didn't live up to those people around you? He has 4 kids, lives with his wife, and he works from home. He doesn't make, ridiculous money, but he's like, no, because I kind of know my role in that I'm someone that can have great conversations with people, and I'm one of the most well-networked people that there are. And I kind of know that I know my role as the person that can always be there for other people, and I kind of live vicariously through that. And there were times when, I felt like I wasn't enough, that I wasn't sufficient. And he's one of those people that like won't do his photography for money, and he is incredible, like incredible photography. I know this whole this topic of this podcast isn't about him, but he just, I would talk about him a lot, like to my parents and my sister and everything, because he's one of those people that really I really look up to, and blows my mind. And I wouldn't have met him if it wasn't for going out of my way to go to these events and stuff. So business incentives aside, like is kind of what's taught me, because when I first lost my job, and I was like, okay, I have to make this work. Like this isn't just an event I'm going to be social. Like I have to be a business owner here.
Right.
This is how I'm going to eat. And that's a very flawed mindset to go into it with, because you just have to let it happen, and you have to view it as we're all here for the same reason. And I think there's kind of the shared human experience of like, this could be an uncomfortable situation, but we're kind of all in it together. And now I honestly really look forward to them. Like I used to get nervous, and I still do sometimes, but it's always, the uncomfortable situation, I think, are where you grow the most. And that's definitely taught me that so far. So
I literally said that earlier today. I was like, the most uncomfortable situations are where we make the most growth, right? I still remember my first networking event, like sitting in the parking lot for like 10 minutes being like, what the hell am I doing right now? I was like, am I about to be an agent of my own company? Like, what does that even mean right now? And, literally some of the people I met at that very first get together, they're the people I'm most excited to see when I go to an event. There's like a photographer, funny you say that I met at that first one, and she's done my branding photography. She's referred clients to me, and she was at the event I went to last night, and I'm always super stoked to see her. So it's like, you got to build up this community. Entrepreneurial life is pretty lonely sometimes, right? And so if you don't have this community, then you're just alone, sitting in the corner of your room, staring at a computer. And like, I don't know about you, but I don't think that's what humans were designed to do. And the thing I really like about that story of Mike, right, the photographer, is that his name?
Yeah, Michael. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Michael. Is, it sounds like he's really figured out like what he wants out of life, right? He says, I'm a connector, and he connects these people. And at the end of the day, if we were to sit down and try to eavesdrop on our funeral, I don't think we're going to want to hear that MMG hit 7 figures and all this stuff, and the Thencan Designs was acquired for $200 million, things like that. Those aren't the things we're going to want to hear. We're going to hear that we were a good son, we were a good friend, and all these other things, that we showed up when we were supposed to. And part of that is being a connector, connecting humans. So yeah, I mean, it's great to we want these businesses to succeed, so that way we can pay the bills, and hopefully the cup gets full and we can allocate those resources where it's more needed. But there's a lot more to life than that.
Yeah, dude, that was really good, first of all. And another thing too is that like finding your metric of success too, and that kind of goes back to what you were saying earlier about because it can get lonely. And I find like on days when I work, I mean, me and you probably work more than 90% of people, but I know you work. I know you're a very hard worker, but I have found when I work really long days, and I go just like talking about it, like talking about your business, talking about your day, talking about things that you've tried. If you don't talk about it, it's almost not real, Like that's why, that's like the biggest thing I learned about these networking events is that like you can say to yourself like, "Oh, I'm a business owner," but like what does that really mean? Like that can mean so many things. But like when you're forced to kind of elaborate on that and give your elevator pitch, which I'm going to have you give yours because I remember you said on our last call. But to have to say that stuff on demand, like you're building that repetition, you're saying it to yourself, you're hearing it, you're like, oh, I run MMG Design, we do logos and branding for small businesses and help them get seen online. So saying that over and over again, you almost hear it for yourself, and getting the reaction of other people validates it for me. And that was the biggest thing I realized. Like, it's not just here, I'm not just here to try and broadcast out what I'm doing, but get feedback and see, how they respond to it, and tweak and come back and, try and make the best thing possible. But yeah, networking.
Yeah. I think it's really important to, hopefully this isn't too off topic, but I think it's really important to always keep the why at the forefront of your mind, and like for me, one of my primary core value is service. And so like when it came time to start the business, I was just like, okay, we're going to help people. How do we do that? It was like, I was already creating this business before I created this business. I didn't even know what I was doing, but I knew I was going to do that, And so when I show up and, I have to slam a little bit of Celsius before the networking event so I can even stay awake because I've been grinding a little too hard this week. It's like, I just remind myself the why. The why is because we're going to help people, and part of that has to be with connecting with people because, like we were saying, before we hit record, it's like before you show up to these networking events, people don't know who the hell you are. So you got to get out there.
Yeah. Yeah, dude, I love that. Dude, by the way, we have a very similar approach to like networking events. Like caffeine.
Are you slamming Celsius also?
No, I go
with.
We'll
get this thing
Ghost.
sponsored? Ghost. No, I'm just kidding.
I know, we should. Dude, you saw my cabinet right now. I use Ghost.
Ghost, yeah.
Yeah. Oh my God, dude, they're so good. But before the Columbus one, I was like super nervous. I was like, okay, I guess time to show out, shake hands. I need to be the young, attractive, tall, not attractive, but like tall, memorable guy.
Yeah.
And dude, I absolutely ripped like 400 milligrams before I went in there, and it worked. But I don't want to, because I think that's another thing too, is I found that when I'm not like on caffeine, this is a whole another rabbit hole, but like the first thing to go is my verbal agility. And that's why
Yeah.
before, because I don't take care of my sleep near as much as I should. Um, I, dude, if I get 6 hours, like I am flying, like it's unreal. Um, but yeah, the first thing to go for me when I'm sleep deprived is just my verbal agility. And because like I hear myself stuttering, it's like I can't talk, and then I lose a lot. I lose self confidence really fast. So that's why mitigate by just um, avoiding that and drinking caffeine for now. But until we, get the habits in place to work on sleep and all that other stuff, then
Yeah, work on the sleep.
yeah,
It's
important.
important.
Yeah, and I think this is another thing that I wanted to talk about was kind of getting away with it while you're young, like, and taking advantage of like being in a situation like me or you. Because I was just telling mom the other day, I was like, I'm trying to appreciate this right now. Like, I'm genuinely so grateful that I don't. This kind of sounds bad, but I don't have, people that are counting on me. Like, I can just spend all day
Yeah.
building this business, building this thing, and putting all into it, and just really just um, finding what burnout looks like. I know that sounds horrible, but you have to kind of go to that edge to find it. Um, and because that's going to inform, and it's something that's going to pay off like down the road. Like me and you, we're so lucky to not have kids, wives, to A, depending on us for the pressure, and B, to just have to dedicate other time, outside of that. So I'm really trying to appreciate it while I have it, because I know it's not going to last forever.
Yeah, I think that's another one of the big tenets that I really try to lean on is gratitude. Gratitude for a lot of stuff. Some of it's good, some of it's bad, some of it's neutral. Maybe I shouldn't be quantifying what it is over here, right? But yeah, I remember talking to a guy in our group. I won't out who it was, but he wanted to take the leap, but he's like, man, I got a family, and I was like, oh, that's a totally different perspective, right? And that went through my thought process. I was like, all right, I'm about to leave my full job here. Can I do this? And it was so much easier to calculate that out, knowing that the only person that really was relying on my paycheck was me, and also like the expenses are way less, so it's easier to stack up a couple paychecks and take that leap when like the only one that you're relying on is yourself, and or the only one that's relying on you is yourself, and that again, the expenses are just lower because there's less people to worry about, right? With one. And so yeah, it's an absolute blessing to be in this position. And hopefully, let's see, I took the quote off my board, but I had a quote for a long time. I can't remember who to attribute it to, but it's something like shoot, I'm going to mess it up. Something like do the work, work like nobody else today. So I can't remember what it is. So you don't have to later.
Yeah. So you can live like no. I got you. Hang on. You could be referring to the Dave Ramsey one, where he says,
I think that's it.
Like he says, live like no one else, so you can live like no one else. That's
yeah.
He says like work like no one else today, so you can live like no one else tomorrow, something like that. But that is a good one. That's a good one a lot.
If you live like no one else, later you can live like no one else. Yeah. So that's one of the million quotes that I try to live by, and but also like I say that, but I really want to be intentional about like at the same time make sure that you're not attaching your happiness to this future spot.
Yeah.
That's super important, because I've definitely done that before in my life. Once I do this, then everything's going to be better. Once I do that, everything's going to be better. And I hate to break it to anybody listening to this podcast, but that future free from flaws is never coming, my friend. And so, trying to figure out like, how do I stay, I like to call it happy. Some people think that's too good. So, how do I stay content in the present? And, we talked about mindfulness earlier with your brand, and it's like staying mindful, staying present, staying content that, like, hey, when I was first starting out the web design company, it was very much feast or famine in between projects, and those famine states, it was scary. And it was very easy for me to go back on that old neural sledding track and be like, as soon as I get a project, I'm going to be okay. And then to just like take a break and be like, whoa, Sam, chill out. Like, everything's okay right now. The sky is not falling. You're not homeless yet. Like, I think we're going to be all right. And then it's like the second I stop worrying about everything, it's like the next project shows up magically. And it's weird how that works, to just sit back and trust the process.
Yeah, dude, me and you were just like, man, like and I even told like Kevin, Kevin Reynolds from our group, so we weren't going to out people, but I used to talk to him like every week.
Yeah.
We'd have a call because I even told him like, okay, beginning of this year, I was so granular on what my goals were, numbers. I even did a podcast about it. I was like, this, this number of clients pay me this much by this date. And I told him on a call, like I said, man, that's already, I'm ahead of schedule now. That's like, I just closed like my biggest project ever. And I was like, okay, that's 2 out of 10 or, and he said, why don't you hold on? He goes, why don't you hold on a little bit there, partner? I said, what? He goes, you just signed on a client. You're not worried about how you can serve them. You're worried about, your personal attribution from it. And I was like, man, that was a big moment for me. And that's something that's kind of like one of those light bulb moments that I like still remember. I remember where I was. I remember I was walking in the hallway of my job. And I was like, it's like, why am I doing this? Am I doing this for checking off boxes and making, trying to make money my own way? Or is it to actually help people? And I think, and you already said this, was you make your North Star something that you can come back to over and over that's, viable. Is kind of one of those things, knowing your true self, knowing what drives you. This is that self-awareness piece. And that was a big thing for me. And I'm, again, like I say this a lot too, but I feel like I'm just so lucky to be where I'm at. And it's so easy to get away from that, like everything, like the feast or famine, everything you're saying, I'm just resonating with, 1,000%. Like, it's honestly pretty crazy. But yeah, even though like I've heard, and I've said this about a couple people, like there's a kid named Aiden that he's in college, and I had him on the podcast, and he's just like genuinely just like one of the nicest people I've ever met. And he's the reason that, I think it's more than acceptable to have role models that aren't like older than you or like millionaires or just pro athletes. Like, role models can look like someone that is very close to where you are. And, you can, it's hard to like, pick and choose like what parts of people that you like and that you want to embody. But like role models can be anyone. And people like you and Aiden and people that are closer to my age just go and prove the concept that, success doesn't always look like, the traditional methods. And talking with those people and, resonating with them and seeing that, we're really not that different is, something that I really fills my cup. So it's a big reason why we have like the podcast, and plus it's just an excuse to like, I originally started it as like a way to network with people. And dude, I've gotten in touch with some people that like I have no business talking to.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, no, like the director of branding from Ohio State, this lady that's going on, her name, will be out afterwards, but Lacey Picasso is her name. She's like one of the biggest like business owners in Columbus. She has a design firm, a UX UI design firm, like 40 under 40 in Columbus. And yeah, just like people like that, just so like, and it's part of it's the uncomfortable aspect of like, okay, I have to talk to these people now. Like I got them in front of me. I got them convinced that I know my shit when I don't, but but it's just, it's just wild, man. But yeah, just that's the long version of me saying that, I look up to you, and you can kind of make role models out of, anyone. So.
Yeah, I think, this reminds me of when I was You're 22, right?
I just turned 23, so I'm old
23. Okay. Hey, as soon as you got a Taylor Swift song about your age, things change.
now.
So when I was 23 also, that's when I was working as an EMT. So it was a million years ago now. It's about 10 years ago actually. And I remember I was getting trained by this guy, Jim, a little older cat, maybe like late 50s, nice gray mustache. And I had no experience, which is rare. Usually in EMS, you like volunteered at a fire department or something like that. You have some sort of experience before you get in your first job. This is a private ambulance company. Very boring, basic life support, old people, nursing homes, hospitals, back to the nursing homes. Well, exciting. Anyway, first day, he's training me. He's asking me all these questions. I don't know. And because I came in like kind of cocky. I don't know. That's just the industry. Like if you go in EMS, like a lot of like younger firefighters, EMTs, they think that they need to be something because they're like a hero in society. I don't know what it is, but it permeates the industry, right? And so like
Yeah.
Jim, because he's an old hat, he's like, okay, I got to knock this guy down a peg, right? College kid, thinks he knows his stuff, probably got good grades in the EMT class. Congratulations, you can take a 100 level community college course. Proud of you. Now, what do you know? And I was getting frustrated because I didn't know the answers to the questions. And finally, I just had to admit the truth and say, I don't know. And then he asked me another question. And I said, I don't know, Jim. And he did that like 3 more times. I was like, what's the point? And he finally like broke it down after I said, I don't know, like the 5th time. And he said, good. It's like the second you think you know everything, you don't know shit. And that lesson has stuck with me for life. And it was a very small seed at that point when I was like 23, 22, but it's really grown, and it's just shown me that I can learn lessons from anybody. I can learn lessons from people that are way older than me, younger than me, that look nothing like me, have completely different beliefs, and it's really served me well. And honestly, that's just like that seed was planted and it took like 5 years to even start to sprout, and it's really starting to come together now. And so I really appreciate you saying that you look up to me. I will say that I look up to you because I'm not brave enough to go out there and do a podcast. And so kudos to you. I'm just like, hey, someday if I start a podcast, I want to be like Andy. So just so you know, I'm thinking that, mindful Milligan, I'm going to do it someday. I don't know if that part was recorded. It'll be funny if you guys heard that part.
Man, I know it's Milligan. I appreciate that. No, you're good, man. I really appreciate that. That means a lot. Yeah, I mean, so we should probably get into like the more nuts and bolts of the episode. But I wanted to ask you like about your background, your story. So you mentioned the EMT. How does that chapter unfold to where you are now? Thencan Designs, SEO extraordinaire, Corgi and all. Like, tell me how.
Yeah, well, I think it really harkens way back to when I was like 13 years old. I had a PSP. All right, and the PSP was this like portable video game system. Yeah, Andy, I know you don't remember. You guys have always had smartphones.
Yeah, I had one. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Nice. And so I remember one day sitting down, and I think we still had dial-up internet back then. Like that's how long ago it was. And I was on this like forum, and somebody was like breaking down the process to hack your PSP, and it was like the equivalent of like jailbreaking an iPhone nowadays, which I guess really isn't a thing anymore. But so you put a zip file on the memory stick, you run a couple things. Next thing you know, I was playing Sega Genesis on my PSP, and I was like, whoa, this is pretty cool. And it really brought me back, man. Like I was 13, and it's weird to be nostalgic as a 13-year-old, but it brought me back to like me and my dad after he got off work playing like Sonic the Hedgehog on this like tube TV. And I was just like, man, that was so cool that like somebody took the trouble to like build this thing and make it so that I could play it on this device. And it really like opened up this like portal in my mind that like technology is cool and I wanted to get involved with it. But I also have a real passion for helping people. And so along the way, I was like, well, I don't know if that's really going to be a good route, and I want to make a lot of money. So let's go to school for pre-med. So I went to school as a biology major, Oregon State, go Beavs. Say that a lot of times. Different OSU over here than you're used to over there. And we played each other in football recently, back in 2018. I don't want to talk about it.
Oh,
Anyway, you
we
can
can
look
talk
that
about it if you
sport up.
want. I mean, I remember. We can talk about
Yeah.
it. Mhm.
Yeah, it was pretty bad. Anyway, so going to school and like a lot of people, I was kind of looking for like a side hustle, just kind of looking for a couple extra ways to make some extra bucks. I was like a dishwasher for a little bit, which I didn't like. And right around that time is when smartphones started to become really popular, and I had a HTC Evo, and the HTC Evo 4G was like one of the first smartphones on Sprint back in the day, and you could root it and you could put a custom ROM on it. And I'd somehow gotten this job as like writing articles for the blog that was like talking about all this stuff, and it was like $10 an article, like nothing big. And I was only like half in on it. I was like trying to like write the articles while I was in like lectures and stuff, and so I'm not a copywriter, and never happened. And but one thing I started to do is I started to create custom ROMs, which is kind of like the software, the OS for it. And it was very, very high level stuff. I wasn't digging into the code yet, but I released this like custom ROM, and next thing you know, it actually got like, I think in lifetime, and I'm getting like 20,000 downloads. And so that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, okay, this is fun. And I realized I was like paying attention to the other people, and they were getting, they were starting to make money off of ads. And so I was like, oh, I'm going to put all these ads up. I'm going to make all this money. And the first month I made like $100, and the second month I made $200. And I was like, oh, here we go. And then I also figured out that I could go around and click on all the computers at the library to increase my ad click count. And turns out that Google is onto that. And so they shut down my AdSense account, and I stopped making money off it. Just as quickly as I started making money off it, I stopped making money on it. So that was a lesson to follow Google's rules. And around that time, the girlfriend I was dating was pretty mad about how much time I was spending staring at my phone. So I decided to just let it go. And so, yeah, after school, I was an EMT for a little bit. And then, I really kind of, for lack of better words, let's just say I needed to completely reset my life, kind of an existential point. And, after that point, I really had to reset, and I had to say, like, what's really important going forward. And it was like, I want to help people, but, I feel like the medical field's out of the question. What else can I do to do that? Can I do it in another way? And so I kind of meandered about, and around that time I started to code, teach myself how to code kind of on the side, had some textbooks, started reading some things, really nerdy stuff like C++, eventually a little bit of JavaScript. And I started to code some stuff in JavaScript, and I started to think like, you know what? I think I can use technology to help people. I learned through that journey there was a lot of ways to help people, not just by, applying pressure when they're bleeding. And I thought that was really cool. And so the plan was go back to Oregon State, get a computer science degree, and we'll go from there. And around that time, I kind of talked myself into an office manager job that I was like almost qualified enough for. But I promised the owner of the small business that anything I didn't know, I will learn. And so that was one of the big skills I learned at Oregon State. Was, it's a top research university in the country, way better than the University of Oregon. And so I got really good at, picking things up quickly. And so as soon as I got into the job, I was like, all right, I got to learn everything about QuickBooks, so I can do this AR and AP stuff that I'd never really done to that point before. I was like, I got to learn how to do this. I got to learn how to do that. And the crazy thing was, within a couple months, this business that made 7 figures, I was doing all the financial stuff. And, I had a really good trainer who was a bookkeeper. So that helped me like short circuit my journey. But the thing that was starting to happen at that time was this idea in my head that I wanted to be an entrepreneur had been there for years, but I constantly put up these blocks of like, I'm not good enough, I can't do it. And it would always be behind a because or a why. And, I was like, I can't own a business because I won't know how to run the books. And then when I figured out I could do it for that business, I was like, well, I can't own a business because I don't know what I'm going to do. And then someday one of my friends reached out to me, and he said, hey man, can you build me a website? And I was stoked. I was like, yes. I was like, I'm going to build you this website. It's going to be sick. I'm going to use this JavaScript framework. It's going to be awesome. I'm going to custom code it. It's going to be perfect for you. And he was like, no, man. He's like, just build it in WordPress.
Wix.
And I was like,
Oh, I thought you were gonna say Wix. So like that would make me
yeah,
better.
no, yeah, it was WordPress, and I was like, I got you, man. And the thing was, I did not have them, but I told him I'd have it done by Monday, so I got on YouTube and I started to figure it out. And I remember like watching like a Daryl Wilson tutorial, like start to finish, like pausing and like doing the things in Elementor as he described it. And I was like, okay, I'm gonna do this. And then I started to flip things over from the template he'd built out to make it match more of my friend's little company that he had. And I was like, huh, this is way easier than custom coding stuff. And, we ended up not finishing the site, but what I'd made by Monday was pretty impressive. And it really just opened the door, right? I was like, oh, is this a thing that people do? And I ended up listening to this podcast by this guy named Josh Hall. You might know him. And yeah, go back to episode whatever to learn more about Josh Hall. Just kidding, helping you out.
Yeah,
I listened to that episode earlier.
I'm supposed to be the one that memorizes the episode, but I don't have that one memorized. So you caught me there. You got me.
Yeah. And so, yeah, I started listening to his podcast. And around that time, I was working for this company. It was a great company. It was a really great opportunity. A small company, small, a tight-knit group of guys that really cared about each other. And so, like, I have no qualms with the company, any of the guys there. I'm still friends with a lot of them. But I was the only person in the office, and I felt like a lot of it weighed on me. And I know I could have let that go, but I'm just the kind of person where I want to put that pressure on myself. And so, like, I was trying to drive over the mountain to see my family every once in a while, my parents, my little brothers. And it was like I was leaving at like Friday night so I could spend the night there, spend Saturday with them, spend a little bit of Sunday, and then drive back on Sunday. And I wasn't doing that every week, but it was really grinding me down. But on those drives, I'm really grateful for those drives because I would listen to Josh Hall, just every episode, like slowly work my way through like 200 episodes. And I just started to build this like thought up in my mind of like, what if I start a web design business? I think I have the skills. I think I could build this up. And so why not do it? And so I started to take his courses. And I remember sitting there on New Year's Eve, 2022 with my Martinelli's, wishing it was, a stronger beverage so I could blame it on that. But I was like, you know what? It's all me. I'm going to make this decision right now. I'm starting a business this year. And if I'm going to do this, I'm going to finish the website by the end of the month. I'm going to get a business credit card this month. I'm going to get the LLC registered this month. I'm going to print the first version of the business cards, which I recently found a bunch of coffee stained bent ones recently. We still got those.
There we go.
And yeah, very simple. And then and I just decided to go for it, and I didn't really know what the timeline looked like. We were talking about this earlier, like, what do we do? But, when I was really checking in with myself, when I was really starting to make that decision, I tried to go back to 18-year-old Sam that started going to school for pre-med. And I just remembered like the main thing he wanted to do was to help people. And, the main thing that, 33-year-old Sam today wants to do is help people. And the big difference is I've been able to align the rest of my core values. That's the thing that's really shifted in the last 15 years. I started to do all this stuff back then, but I said I was doing it for my little brothers and my family and my friends and stuff. And then I just go off and party and do the things that young people do. And, I got a lot of wreckage along the way. And so I'm glad to be over in this part of the journey where I feel like things are finally starting to line up better. And so every day I can kind of wake up and like we were talking about earlier, look at that North Star and be like, yes, okay, I know I'm heading in the right direction, even if it gets scary. And so, yeah, as I started the business, I was very unsure of what would be next, but I just said, you know what, if I just stick to my why, I'm just going to trust the process and we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I love that, man. And I come back to it over and over again because when you're working by yourself most of the day, as we do, you have to remember, because it's not easy. You have to remind yourself of, why you're doing it. And if you can keep it top of mind, it just makes it a lot easier to push through the parts of your day that A, aren't fun, and B, just drain you. Like there are parts of the day, and we talked about this, I think it was the first time we talked, but like knowing the parts of your day when you can like handle the handle the stuff you don't want to do. Like, because that's, I mean, you said it too. It's like the hardest things are, you know, where the most growth happens. So you have to interject them into your day somehow. But you know, finding a schedule where you can have like the most willpower to be able to do the things that you don't want to do is a big part of it too. Because there's no solutions, only trade-offs. It's something that is really top of mind for me right now, because if left to my own devices, I think this is true for everybody, but you know, we all have a front row seat at our own shortcomings. But if left to my own devices,
Yeah.
I will find myself, you know, on LinkedIn, on, you know, doing stuff, just, you know, running around, having to like create the perfect conditions, like, oh, I'm gonna make another cup of coffee, you know, oh, the conditions aren't perfect, like just honestly just being a little bitch and just sorry, but it's not getting to work. And yeah, it's, you have to have that forefront at the front of your mind, and I think it can change sometimes too, but
Yeah.
I think we're all in it to help people on some level, and I know that's why I'm in it as well. And it helps you, like I said when I was talking to Kevin, it helps you um, when when you deviate from it, because I have before, and I'm sure I will again. But you have to have those things and interject them consciously in your day so that you can just remind yourself, because we're the ones that are in it all the time. Like
Mhm.
it's not like we can bow, like we'll get there eventually, and we're already kind of starting to say like, oh, you know, I'm not feeling it today, you know. Thencan is, you know, closed down. You know, we're not going to talk to any clients. We're not going to do anything. Um, we're not going to say we're open for businesses, because you're the one that is the detriment of it, and not just you, but the people that you serve too.
Mhm.
So it's, you have to have that at the front of your mind too. Another thing I wanted to talk about too was how different is it now compared to kind of when you started? Because how long have you, of like, what was the day? Because I know you remember this, but like, what was the day when you're like, okay, I'm all in officially? How long ago was that? And how much has the business changed kind of since day one?
Yeah. So, I mean, I registered the LLC on January 6th, 2023. And I remember that day for a different reason than everybody else in the country, because it's my mom's birthday. So happy belated birthday, Mom. Um,
Mhm.
but
What's her
everybody
name?
else remembers it for a different day. Stephanie.
Stephanie. Okay.
Hi, Mom. I was always
Good one.
told if I do an interview, you're supposed to say, Hi, Mom. Hi, Mom. Love you.
Yeah.
Um, and so that's when I registered the LLC, but I was side hustling at first, right, as we do. And but I got a lead somewhere along the way that I thought was going to be pretty lucrative. And I did the math and I was like, oh, that buys me X number of months so I can put in a notice earlier. And so I put in a 2 months notice at the end of February for May 1st. And turns out that lead did not materialize. So I left my full-time job with 0 paid clients on May 1st of 2023, which
Whoa,
is
hell
almost
yeah. Let's
exactly
go.
1 year ago today. So
No better way to start, man. No better way to
yeah.
start.
Oh man. Yeah. It's like if you want to put some fire under your ass, try that out. And I'd done the math in my head. I was like, okay, I got about 3 months in the checking account if I, eat top ramen and live like I did back in college. And then I got about 3 months in savings. So that was my cushion right there.
There we go.
And so, the early days, it was a little rough, but we got a couple clients. May or may not have been able to convince my past employer to let me do a website. So that was a good first one. And then I went out to a BNI group and got just as a visitor, and was able to get a lead off of that. And that's been one of my best clients to this day. And so I highly encourage people, while they're getting out, at the very least, visit these groups, even if you can't afford them, because that was my big thing. I was like, I can't afford $1,500 because BNI is expensive as heck out here.
Yeah. Yeah.
But at least show up, because you're going to make these connections. And some of the people I met in those meetings, I still talk to, even if I haven't done business with them, and I know they're thinking about me, and so that's always a good thing.
Mhm.
But then it was like, okay, all of a sudden I'd closed a little bit of business, had a little bit of extra money in my new business checking account, which felt great. But then it was like, you don't get anything after that, and I'm still waiting
Yeah.
for revisions and content and things like that. And so it's like the project, the second payment wasn't coming yet. And so like I
Right.
remember I think I got one more project after that was pretty good, or a couple small ones. I was doing some landing pages. I remember my first landing page was $500 and my most recent landing page was $2,500. So that's fun to watch the evolution there.
Yeah, dude,
And
isn't
then
that crazy? Like how fast it. Like I remember I did my first logo for. Well, I did a shit ton for free, but I
I
did
was
my
gonna
first paid logo. I did my first paid logo for $300, and it took me days. Okay, and
say.
then the last one. I mean, I'll say how much the last one was. It was by far my biggest website project ever, and feels less so rewarding than getting paid for the first time. Like you'll probably remember that $500 for your first website and how it felt more than the most recent one did, because like validated the concept. Like I just made money doing this.
Um, but the one thing I really tried to do was I tried to listen. I was still showing up at these networking events, different ones throughout town. And I hadn't even joined like a prescribed group at this point yet. But every time I had a conversation with somebody, I'd tell them I built websites for small businesses, and they'd be like, "Cool. What do you know about SEO?" And I was like,
Hmm.
hmm.
We're trying
And
to
I
tell you,
remember,
man. Stars are lining.
yeah, yeah, the stars are starting to align, right? And that first client, they said, "Why should I trust you with my SEO when you rank 100th for Bend web design?" And that just reminded me of like benching Michael Jordan back in high school. I was like, "I'm gonna show you." And so every time I'd hit
Like,
those little bits of famine, I'd be like, "All right, it's time to learn. These are the skills that I built back at Oregon State in the library. I know how to stay up late. I know how to study." And so it was like, it started with courses. I learned the basics. And then it was like even just watching like YouTube videos and getting good at like figuring out like, okay, that's BS, that's not. And then just starting to apply it. Like one of the biggest things with SEO is just reps, getting reps in. You just heard, I haven't been doing SEO for that long, but the more reps you can get in, it can help you like leapfrog over people that have done it for years, especially with a local SEO. Like I will consistently say the national SEO is really hard because you got to do all this stuff, and there's no way you'll see results in the first couple months because it's so competitive. And there's so many things you got to do. But when it comes to local SEO, it's like I can't tell you how many times I've just like done 5 things to a Google business profile, and the next thing you know, they're ranking way higher. Now that's, I'll say, fact check there. That's a really non-competitive, like an uncompetitive, I don't even know if that's a word, space. And that's how a lot of people get these like vanity metrics they'll show on YouTube and LinkedIn and stuff like that. And so like, full disclaimer, that's low competition, but at the same time, like that changed that business owner's life. Like that went from them like getting almost no business to being like, oh, I think I can hire help again. And I'm like, oh, like that's what we're here to do.
mhm.
So anyway, I was listening to those things, and then all of a sudden I said, well, why don't I just do it for the first couple clients, right? You got to give it away for free. What does Hermosi say? You suck. So give it away for
Mhm.
free. And so I did that. And then the first couple clients I gave it away for very cheap. And one of my favorites is this cabinet maker in town. And I remember we finished his site, and I'll never forget, he had one project out in his shop, and he kind of looked at me like, I don't know, like, let me think about it. And he thought about it for a week, and I was going to give him like 2 months for 3, or 3 months for 2 months kind of price. And he came back to me on the phone. He said, let's try it out. Why not? And we did it. And I remember I came back 3 months later, and his shop was full. He had a helper employed. And I was like, what do you think? Should we keep going? And he was like, what else can we do? And so that was a really good
Nice.
feeling. That just like that, as much as I can't, like, SEO is sometimes feels like such a scammy industry where I can wake up on any morning and just be like, I'm a fraud. I don't know what I'm doing. But then I have to play the fact check game with myself, right? I have to be like, okay, dude, like, what are the actual results you've gotten for clients? And sometimes it's harder, right? The custom cabinets one, that one's more competitive. And I've been taking on more things like electricians and roofers and general contractors, and that's going to be harder. I just know. And the thing is like setting expectations, right? But
Mhm.
and you got to put in more work there. But it's like just knowing that I've seen results, like, just reminds me to just trust the process, just keep going, right? Remember the North Star, remember the
Mhm.
why. And yeah, and that changed the game. In November going into December, November I had another big project, right? Another spike. And then into December it was another deep, uh, another stage of famine, right? And
Mhm.
it really just felt like I was like, I don't know if I can keep doing this. Just like my mental psyche, I don't know if I can do this for another year. But that was right when I started to offer the SEO services, and my recurring revenue at that point was around $300 from maintenance plans. And I know Josh Hall's plan is if I can get up to 20 clients, then I'll have $2,000. The rent's paid, the bills are paid, I'm good to go. But I was like, it's going to take so long to get to those 20 web design clients. I don't know if I'm going to get there before I give
Mhm.
up. And as soon as I started to offer those SEO packages, next thing you know, that 300 went to 3,000 in a couple months, and now it's close to 6,000, and I don't know if it's slowing down. So,
oh shit, dude. Woo! Oh boy, that's awesome. No, so damn, that's an awesome transition there, because I mean, how big, like, was SEO even in your mind to be like the core of your business from, when you started it like a year ago? Like, you just said you didn't even start adding it until November, December. So shit, that's actually way more recent than I even realized. Because I look at you, because I joined pro in October, something like that. October.
that sounds about right. Yeah, maybe September, October. Yeah.
Dude, that fires me the hell up, dude. That just seeing how much and obviously it's, it's not. I'm not saying that happened, since just November. It's I played golf with this guy in college. This guy's like wise. Okay, his name's Zane Brownrigg. Shout out Zane if you're listening. But
Zane.
Zane, yeah. But this guy, he's like, because I asked him, I was a freshman, he was a senior, like fifth year senior, one of the best players in the country, national champion, everything like that. So I asked him, I said, like, dude, like, do you have any advice? Like, I don't know what the hell I'm doing here. It's my first year playing college golf. And he goes, just thinks like super stoic dude. He goes, it's not the one, it's not, what do you say? It's not the 1,000 strikes. It's not the 1,000th strike that breaks the marble. It's the 1,001. Fuck, sorry, I just messed that up. But he's like, it's not, the real person knows
999 to come before or something like that.
Right. Yeah. It's not the 999 strikes that will break the marble. It's the 1,000th one. So basically he's saying that you put in all these reps beforehand that no one sees. And then after you get the big result of the stone shattering, then it looks like everyone's like, oh, it happened overnight success. And you're like, no, I've been doing this for a really long time, and I've been building the framework and the skills. But there's going to be that day where you feel like it all comes at once, and then that's all everyone sees. So I'm very cognizant of that. But that's great to hear that you've built, the recurring revenue like that, just in the last 6 months, it looks like. So that's awesome, man.
Yeah. Yeah. And to answer your question directly, you said, was SEO one of your core services when you started? I would say, sort of. If you look back at that very first business card, I put SEO on there just because Josh told me to. And so, but it wasn't on the second business card because I didn't believe that I could offer it. I was at that point. And the thing for me is, like, the core service that Thencan Designs provides is service. I actually have it written down. We help people grow their small businesses online so they can better enjoy their lives, whatever the hell that looks like. Right now, that's SEO. And I got really good advice from an agency owner in town, and he said, look, man, web design is probably not going to exist in a couple of years. Can we agree on that? And I was like, probably. And he said, but there will always be somebody between small businesses and search engines. And I think he said the internet, but I think search engines. And one thing that's really true, and I've heard this on YouTube since then, from one of those talking heads out there, is that even if it's not Google, it's been Google for the past 20 years plus, but it could change, right? OpenAI could release a browser tomorrow and really eat away at Google's market share. But as long as you're that person that's in between, you will always have a job. Even if you're utilizing 100 AI agents to run your agency, I think this was on Josh's podcast recently. It's like, AI is not going to replace web designers, and it's not going to replace graphic designers, right? But web designers that are using AI, graphic designers that are using AI will replace the ones that aren't. And so I think positioning myself there and just making sure that I'm an interface between small businesses and the internet, maybe search engines, I think is the place where I want to make sure this little company that I'm making starts. I think will always put me in a place where I can show up happy, because I think that if you're just so worried about SEO, like, eventually SEO could go away. SEO is not dead. Don't listen to all the videos on YouTube. Those are clickbait. But like, if SEO does go away, like, then the company dies. But if you stay nimble and you have a guiding light, then I believe, I don't know, I'm not a friggin' business genius or anything, but I believe that at the very least, I'll know that I'm showing up, from a place of truth, and be like, at least I'm helping people today, right? Maybe the business doesn't make it to the next week, but for now, we're doing just fine.
Yeah, man. And that's awesome. And it's validates a lot of, my experience too, just getting started. Like I said, I people come to you. It doesn't even matter. A lot of it doesn't matter how you position yourself. It is important, but they're coming to you for you. Like I started doing graphic design, and eventually, you just become the person that they need service for, that they need you for service. And it's so much easier and it's so much more comfortable for them to go back to you for a skill that's, outside of maybe like adjacent skill sets than it is to, and I'm sure you get asked all the time, like, oh, can you do this, this other thing for our business,
Mm-hmm.
Adjacent services, it's so much easier. And I'm the same way when I subcontract out work or when I'm looking for help. It's like, oh, it'd be really great if you did this too. And you kind of like almost try and, because I just like this person and I trust them. And so at the forefront of that is offering a service and building the relationship. And then on top of that, it's, staying nimble and then being able to use your skill set to provide more and more from them. Because I learned that just over time, if you even, and it almost progresses like as your skill set does too. That's what I found is like, okay, I started and I had such a great internship director. His name is Mike. And he was so good about doing all this stuff. Like he was the sole marketing director for a 60-person company. And he's like, yeah, Andy, I'm gonna overwork you, but you're gonna learn all this stuff. I learned email, I learned web design, learned everything, graphic design, social media editing, email campaign, automation, Zapier, all this stuff. And I didn't even know it at the time, but it's like how much of that has helped me now is actually insane. And what I mean to say by that is that he knew that you're going to have to be somewhat of a jack of all trades because that's what he was. And when you are, then you're just better positioned to help other people. And, James said it, if you had that guiding light of service, then it's just more stuff that you can use to help them. And if there are pros to niching down, I think, because if you get really good at one thing, then you can help those people even more because you're the subject matter expert. But yeah, it's great to see that, you're not attached to, you don't tie your self-worth to, just SEO or the thing that you've gotten, a lot of notoriety for. So I really admire that.
Yeah. And I think this reminds me of what we were talking about earlier, like that blessing of, not having people rely on us, which gives us the opportunity to kind of expand our horizons a little quicker, maybe a little more, I don't want to say stupidly, bravely. There we go.
I would say that's accurate though. Yeah.
Yeah. A little bit of both, right? A little column A, a little column B, but, in the early days, you're going to have to do other things, right? And I think it's foolish when people out there like niche from day one. Like, I don't know, like, yeah, maybe you could if you already have some acumen, but like I didn't go to school for digital marketing. I'm figuring all this stuff out as I go. And so I gotta build up, I gotta get these reps in somehow, right? And a lot of it for me has just been being honest and being vulnerable with my clients. A lot of times I've told them like, hey, like, you're the first person I'm doing this with, so I'm going to give you a good deal. And they're like, okay. And then like, if the results still come, they're just like, sweet, you're stuck with me forever. And I'm like, great. Yeah. But a lot of times that has meant in the early days is like, oh, now I'm off doing some email thing that I don't really want to do. Right. But at least now I know that they can trust me. And I think that one of the things that can be helpful in doing that stuff in the early days is it really gives us a good idea of what we like and what we don't like. Right. Mm-hmm. And so, doing that email thing or that DNS record thing, or even just doing, say like revisions for websites, like there might be some part of a process that really grinds your gears and you find out that like, this is the main thing I'm doing, but I don't know if I can do that forever. And then the nice thing is like, once you've done it a little bit, you're like, this sucks. you can find people out there and very quickly, see if they pass the sniff test, like, oh yeah, this person's legit. And then you can have these power partners, and then especially if they specialize in the other thing. I know we were talking about this earlier, but it's like, like I never want to do social media management. And so it's like, once I find somebody that I can trust, then I'm like, whew, like it takes a weight off my shoulder to know that I can like refer my clients to somebody else. And then like every time I hand somebody off to that person, like I know that's just like, was it Brene Brown talks about like the jelly beans or something when you're building a relationship with somebody.
Yeah.
And so, I feel like I'm giving her some jelly beans, she's giving me some back, and and it just works out. It's that that synergy, right? That 1 + 1 = 3, or I'm supposed to do that. It's podcast. I'm doing weird stuff over here. Anyway, yeah, it's we can all, coming from a scarcity mindset, I think is a dangerous place to live, especially if you're creative trying to freelance. And if we can find this, Josh calls it co-opetition. I don't think there's a better word for it, but it's like working with the agency that's bigger than you, working with the freelancer that's below you, if you will, or just starting off, working with the people that are next to you that do other things, like, just building up this network of people. As an entrepreneur, it gets lonely, but if you have all these people you can trust that are in this orb around you, then at the very least you have somebody to have coffee with, and on a really good day you might get $5,000 client from one of them, and so that's pretty cool.
Yeah. And yeah, dude, that's awesome. Yeah, dude, you're just like spitting absolute bombs today. Like I'm so glad that I'm so glad you came on, man. But I think that's a pretty good place to end. Like I said, I don't want to keep you all night because I know you've got your ebbs and flows and your habits of working. Real quick though, one thing I want to end on was like, what does your day in the life look like? I kind of asked you this in the beginning, but I want to ask this to everybody that comes on the show, is because that's a big part of the listenership is like young creative entrepreneurs, and I think it helps to kind of get a roadmap of what like a typical day looks like, because success follows success, and I'm always looking to learn from people I look up to. So take me through like wake up to go to bed. What are the things that you prioritize? Times of the day you work the best, things like this.
Let's see. I'm gonna try to not make this be an hour long. Let's see. I usually wake up somewhere in the 7 to 9 o'clock range. That's usually pretty good for me. I tend to start off with something motivational, and then just get the coffee going. I do the thing I'm really not supposed to, and I look at emails, just because I feel like I am my administrative assistant. So that's when I put on my administrative assistant hat and I go through and check the emails and see if there's anything else, and then I will check my calendar. I usually try to put stuff between anywhere from 9 to midnight. And so like I just kind of do a quick span of the day of like, okay, what do we have coming up? When can I take breaks? When am I flexible? And I have a couple hard stops throughout the week, like we all do, certain networking events and groups and things like that we go to. So I'm just like, yep, it's Wednesday, I'm going to Toastmasters or whatever it is. And then usually I usually get spurts of energy at the start of the day and the end of the day. And I'm also really, I'm usually more in a connecting state in the middle of the day. And so I try to schedule any meetings around lunchtime, plus or minus a few hours. And so start of the day will usually be a lot of client work. And so I'm looking at, SEO stuff. Just depends on what it is for the project, what we're doing. And then, like I said, I'll kind of go and transition to meetings in the middle of the day. Yeah, either new clients or meeting with current clients, just checking in on their projects to see where they're at. And then end of the day, I do have a lot of commitments in the evening with like either like networking groups. I try to check in with those sometimes. I'm trying to dial that back recently, trying to live more life. And so I try to leave as many evenings open as possible. But then often, a lot of times around 8 or 9, things just naturally get done. And so I will get back into the computer and a couple hours. It just kind of depends on the day. But I've definitely been trying to make more space in my schedule. Like Wednesday mornings, I've been skiing, which is a new thing for me. This is only my second season, so I'm still a noob, but it's been fun. been trying to have weekends. I've been trying to have nights where I don't work. Doesn't always work out, but I try to at least give myself a couple hours. Like I said, I get a lot of good work done in those last couple hours of the day. That's when I record my YouTube videos a lot of the time, because Loaf's not barking around and the traffic's not coming, so the light's not flashing on the back. So and I'm really big on like 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. That's a big book for me, and his weekly planning thing I basically have in my Notion. And so every like Sunday, or if I skip on Sunday, I'll do it first thing in the morning. I try to sit down and really get the whole week figured out. And so that way I'm like, okay, how am I going to get all this client work done in this week? How am I going to get those meetings done that Calendly seem to schedule for me without my permission? And how am I also going to live life, connect, and make space so that I could, travel over the mountain and not have to be in such a hurry to be with my family, and actually take a couple days off and do that kind of stuff.
Yeah, man, that's awesome. I think there's a lot to learn from that, and I appreciate you sharing, because I know I've had people ask me that too, and there's always a little bit of like animosity for me, at least. I'm like, oh, should I share that I, like don't have a life? But that's very similar to me, like, to be honest with you. And I think I'm trying to like appreciate it now, because scarcity mindset is just one hell of a thing. And you mentioned it earlier, but I don't know what the number would be for me to change. Like, right, I already have so much anxiety around not getting enough done in the day. Like, because I'm starting to grow a network like locally, and at least once a day I'll see someone, and it's like, oh, unforced conversation, or get a phone call, or something like this. And dude, like, the whole time I'm thinking like, I need to get back to work. And I'm just like, and afterwards I'll realize that, like, man, is this ever going to go away? Like, this is what life's going to be like now. But I don't know. I think there's something to be said too about getting fulfillment from your work. And like, I don't know. It's kind of one of those things where it's like, you don't know what you don't know what you're missing out on, because it's just not part of your thought process. Like, for me and you, there's probably, and a lot of other people are like this, there's no alternative. Like, you can't imagine doing anything else on a typical, 9 to midnight than, growing your business. You get a lot of energy out of doing that. I get so much, not energy, but I get so much validation, so much fulfillment, so much energy out of just getting to the end of the day and knowing, like, dude, like, I grinded today. Like, there's no way that if I spend the next, however long doing this, that I'm not going to get the results that I'm dreaming of. And I get a lot of fulfillment out of that. And that's a big part of, I think, that's why we live as humans, is that fulfillment from work. And for some people, that fulfillment comes from other places, like, interpersonal relationships, or I just know that, my parents think I'm very strange and abnormal that I work as much as I do, and I spend as much time, marketing and doing all this stuff on social media. And they think it's very, because at their age, it was totally different. I mean, they were both like lifelong employees too. So, like, one of them was a cop for 35 years. The other one's a librarian and a teacher. So they don't really know anything other than, shut it off at 4 and, go and live your life. And there's definitely a value to that. And that's something that you kind of have to teeter on both ends of the fire to kind of find somewhere in the middle. But it's super refreshing to hear that, that there are other people that value the same things you do. And I think it's also kind of a reality check to people that maybe aren't doing that aren't, putting in the hours, and, maybe aren't seeing the results that they want, then to kind of see what other people do, and, maybe make adjustments accordingly, or just question what your expectations are, and if they match what you're doing during the day. But I appreciate you sharing that one.
Yeah, no problem. I don't know if work-life balance is a real thing. That was air quotes for the people listening. But my thing is, for me, I will speak from my experience, is just like you said, like when I log back in to SEMrush and I see that big like position jump based off of that thing that I did the other day, I'm just like, yes. And even though I'm just all alone in the corner of my room, I'm like, yes. And I have a little celebration by myself, you know, and I feel like I should actually like get up and dance
High five.
sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah. But at the same time, like one of the things that I've really worked on cultivating over the last couple of years is, you know, bring it back to mindfulness. And so like when I am presented with an opportunity to connect with another person, whether it's in rec land like we're doing right now, or it's in real life, like I will, you know, it takes 2 seconds to put this thing in do not disturb like I have it right now, so that little buzz won't be bugging me. And I can sit there and I can really focus on what I'm doing for the next hour and a half, you know, the next hour, the next 30 minutes, whatever it is. And then I can like get out of that and I can go back into work. It's like I'm clocking in and clocking out throughout the day so many times. And for some people, I think it would drive them absolutely freaking crazy. But for some reason, for me, like it's like a great balance. And, you know, I still, maybe that's what that is, but I still don't think I've found it because I know I need to relax more. But, you know, maybe I'm relaxing when I'm back in SEMrush. So it is what it is.
Yeah, man, that's that self-awareness piece again. But no, man, I super appreciate you sharing and for coming on today, dude. Like I know podcasts aren't easy for some people, but I try to make it as laid back as I can. And I think you absolutely killed it, dude. Like it's one of the most fun ones I've had. I'm not worried about impressing you.
Appreciate
I'm sorry to say, but
it.
yeah,
I heard you a little nervous on some of the other ones.
yeah, dude. Wait till the one that's coming out Wednesday. You listen to that one. I was like, not in a good headspace, but it's kind of, dude, listening to yourself talk. That's such a bitch. Like that's just horrible. Like that
hate
honestly is like
listening to
a
my YouTube.
knife. Like just, and I do it every week. And
Hey, you do a great job, man. I really like, I haven't, you know, I'll be honest, I haven't listened to every episode, but I listened to a lot of the early ones. I listened to a couple of the guest ones, and it's pretty cool what you're out here doing, man. I appreciate it. And it's like documenting that journey. It's so important because, you know, like there's 1,000 other people that are just like you right now that are trying to do the same thing, that for whatever reason don't want to get this story out there. And so like what you're doing, uh, it's just helping them have something to relate to, you know, just like how I was listening to Josh on those car rides over, like the stories that you're sharing, and also like other people's stories that you're letting be shared through your podcast. Like it, you know, it can help people move the needle to leave their job. So the employers of the world are like, stop it, Andy. But the young creatives are like, keep inspiring me, Andy. So there you go.
I really appreciate that. But one of the biggest reasons I started was because it was like a place of insecurity. Like I was like, okay, you know, I love like learning stories. Like I love just learning about other people because I'm always thinking, like I'm always in my head so much. I was like, okay, what am I doing wrong? I'm not where I want to be. I must be doing something wrong. And the biggest thing that shows taught me is that everyone feels that way to some extent. Like we don't know what the hell we're doing. Nobody does.
Yeah.
So we're all just kind of like fumbling our way forward. And for me, there was so much validation in that, and also empathy and, you know, understanding. But it started for me as a place of like, okay, I know I'm not the most talented person, but if I can give people a platform where, you know, they get validation and I can share like all these interesting creatives and share their stories, and then I don't have to worry about trying to impress other people, which I feel like I've spent a lot of my life doing. And yeah, it's not about me, and that's what I love about it. So, but yeah, man, thank you like so much for coming on. Where can people find you? Thencan, Loaf, all the good stuff. Where can I get to find you?
Yeah, friggin' Loaf. He didn't get enough screen time in this one, but yeah, obviously, thencandesigns.com is the website, but probably get more useful content if you head over to YouTube. Just search for Thencan Designs, pop up. You'll see some Loaf shorts on there. So if you're a fan of corgis, be sure to at least check it out for that much. And if you want to learn about SEO, you might learn a thing or two there. And then you can find me on LinkedIn too. That's the only social I'm willing to do.